Okay, let's start with number 1. Just as a side note, your final exam is going to be 20 questions. They are going to be multiple choice / multi-select. So just keep that in mind as you're preparing for your final exam. This isn't like that. Yep, it's on that back part. So right where you walked in. Yep. Okay, so it is going to be 20 questions. It is going to be multiple choice. Okay, so just keep that in mind as you are preparing for this exam. Okay, so number 1 says, solve each equation and remember to check for extraneous solutions. So with these are radical functions, right? And the reason why I know that is because it's got this 1/2. So I'm going to rewrite this using a square root. So I got square root of -1 minus 2x equals x. Now I want to isolate the radical first, which we've already done. And then we want to get rid of that radical. So how do I get rid of this radical? I'm going to square both sides, right? So when I do that, I'm going to get -1 minus 2x equals x squared. I'm going to move everything to one side. So I'm going to move everything to one side. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides, add 2x to the other side. And so that's going to give me x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 0. Well, now I'm going to factor. Okay, factoring does not go away. So please make sure that you know how to do it. So we're going to do a times c, which is going to give us 1, and b is going to give us 2. What 2 numbers can make this happen? 1 and 1. So this is going to be x plus 1 times x plus 1. So if we wanted it to be actually solved, we're going to take each of these parentheses and set them equal to 0 and solve. So that would be x equals -1. Now remember what I said at the beginning, where we need to make sure that we check for extraneous solutions. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take -1 and we're going to plug it back into our original equation. So I'm going to check on this other side. I'm going to say check. And I'm going to take the original and plug in -1. So I'm going to get -1 minus 2 times -1 raised to the 1/2 equals -1. Okay, so let's simplify this. What's -2 times -1? 2. What's -1 plus 2? +1, right? And then what is the square root of +1? Is 1 equal to -1? No. So that's going to be no solution. Okay. So notice how, even though we solved for something, when we plugged it back in, it didn't work. Okay, so that's going to be no solution. So you would put x equals -1 if it actually worked. Okay. Now remember, there's a lot of writing, so if you want to do it on a separate sheet of paper, that's probably a good idea. Okay, because that was just for one problem. Going ahead and moving along to number 2. It's kind of similar to what we did on the last one. So I want you to go ahead and try number 2 on your own, and then we're going to go over it in just a second. Okay, so looking at number 2. Again? Yep, we're gonna square both sides. Okay, so that's gonna give us x squared equals negative 20 plus 12x. Bless you. We're gonna move everything to one side. Okay, so we're gonna subtract this 12x. We're gonna add 20. So this will be x squared minus 12x plus 20 equals 0. Okay, so what I've done so far is I've squared both sides, and I got x squared equals negative 20 plus 12x, and then I moved everything to one side. All right, I've had a request to write it clear. Here we go. Squared. So that's x squared equals negative 20 plus 12x. I'm going to move everything to one side. So that means I'm going to subtract and add. So I'm just going to put this as x squared minus 12x plus 20 equals 0. Okay. Now I'm going to factor. So that means I'm going to do a times c, which is 20. B is negative 12. What two numbers can make that happen? Well, negative 10 and negative 2 can. So that means I'm going to have x minus 10 times x minus 2. When I set both of those equal to 0 and solve, that's going to give me x equals 10 and x equals positive 2. Now with radicals, I always have to check for extraneous solutions. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say check. And I'm going to plug both 10 and 2 into this equation. So I'm going to check 10 first. So if I plug in 10 into my equation, let's look at what that gives me. That gives me 10 equals the square root of negative 20 plus 120. If I combine like terms, that's going to give me 100. Well, what's the square root of 100? That's going to give me 10, right? So 10 works. Okay, 2 is also going to be plugged in. So when I plug in 2, this is going to give me the square root of negative 20 plus 24. Well, negative 20 plus 24 is going to give me 4. What's the square root of 4? 2. So both x equals 2 and x equals 10 works. So that would be included in my answer. Oh, okay. All right, so on number 3, we've got, and I'm going to just write it over here. We've got the square root of negative 40 plus 14n equals n. Now I want to get rid of that square root, so I'm going to square both sides. That's going to give me negative 40 plus 14n equals n squared. I'm going to move everything to one side. So that means I'm going to subtract and add and move everything to the other side. So that'll give me n squared minus 14n plus 40. And now I'm going to factor. So a times c is going to give us 40. B is negative 14. What two numbers will make that happen? Negative 10 and negative 4. So that'll give us n minus 10, n minus 4. So n would equal either 10 or 4. Now remember, with our radicals, we have to check for extraneous solutions. So I'm going to plug 10 back into my original equation. And I'm going to check that. And then I'm going to also plug in 4 into my original equation. Which one worked? Anybody check? This is on number 3. Josh says that both of them work. Do you agree? Well, if we check him, we're gonna get -40 plus 140, so that would give us 100. Well, what's the square root of 100? Well, that's 10. So we know that 10 works. If we do 14 times 4, that's gonna give me 56. -40 plus 56 is 16. What's the square root of 16? Well, that's 4. So both of these work. What's up? Say it again. Right. So this raised to the 1/2 power is the same thing as taking the square root of something. Yeah. Okay. So all of these you're going to do the exact same way. Number 8 is the only one that's kind of written differently. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Actually, let's go ahead and take a look at number 5. So I'm going to skip to number 5. Okay. So looking at number 5, it has both sides have this to the 1/2 power. Okay. So in order to get rid of that square root, we're going to square both of these. And so that's just going to give us what's underneath this radical. So that'll give us 3x plus 35 equals -5 minus x. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to get our x's on one side and numbers on the other in order to solve for x. So I'm going to add x to both sides. And so that'll give us 4x plus 35 equals -5. I'm going to subtract 35 from both sides. And so that's going to give us 4x equals -40. So x would equal -10, right? Remember, we've got to plug it back in and make sure that it works. Well, when we plug it back in, we get 5 raised to the 1/2 power on that side. And over here, we get -5 minus -10. So that's going to give us 5 raised to the 1/2 power. So both sides equal each other. So x equals -10 is correct. Once you finish copying that down, go ahead and try number 7. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to square both sides to get rid of that squared root. And so that's going to give me 3x minus 21 equals x minus 1. Now I'm going to get my x's on one side and then numbers on the other side. So I'm going to add that 21 to the other side. And so that's going to give me 2x equals 20. So that'll give me x equals 10. Remember, we always have to plug it back in. So when we check, we're going to substitute the number that we get down here back into this original equation. So when we check it, that's going to give me 30 minus 21, which is just going to give me 9 raised to the 1/2 power. And over here, that's going to give me 9 raised to the 1/2 power. So it works. So x equals 10 is our answer. Okay. Last one for this section. So on this one, we have a number equals a square root. So if we square both sides, we're going to get rid of that square root. So that'll give us 16 equals n divided by 7. Now we want n by itself. So we're going to multiply both sides by 7. And what's 16 times 7? Number 8. Say it again. 112. So n would equal 112. Again, you want to make sure that it actually works. If we plug 112 back into this original equation, 112 divided by 7 is going to give us 16, and then the square root of 16 is 4. So that would equal both sides. So this would work. Okay. All right, so on these next couple of problems, you're sketching the graph of each function. So on your final exam, you're going to be asked which one of these graphs represent this function. Guys, take this and plug it into Desmos. Okay, you're going to have that option up at the top of your test. So just click on the Desmos button and type this in. Okay. Remember the cubic root is different than square root. Okay. So make sure that when you go into Desmos, you go to functions and you go to the cubic root, or it's going to say like the nth root, and then you'll type in that 3 in there. But this cubic root is different from 3 times the square root. So please be careful of that. Those are different. We're looking for this one, not that one. Okay. So you'll sketch these graphs. And I'm not going to put that on here because I feel like at this point you're able to do that. Okay, so that's what you're doing for all those. These right here are exponential functions. Okay, how did I know that these were exponential? Well, they have a number. They have a number raised to an x. So it's exponential when we have a number raised to an x exponent. That's why we call it exponential. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at number 17. All right, so it says simplify. Does that say negative 1.5? Yeah, okay. All right, so what we're gonna do on this one is we're gonna use our exponent rules. Okay, if we have something that's negative in the exponent, then that means we're going to take what's inside the parentheses and flip it. Go ahead and make it flipped before you do anything else. Okay, so that negative exponent means that I'm going to flip everything that's inside. What's another way to write this 1.5? Anybody know? Say again? Yeah. What is it? 3 over 2. So I'm going to rewrite this as 3 over 2. And I'll show you why in just a second. So this is 1 over 49 r to the second raised to the 3 over 2. So now our exponent rules state that we're going to take each thing that's inside the parentheses and we're going to raise it to this power on the outside. So that means I'm going to have 1 over 49 raised to the 3/2 power. And then I'm going to take this r squared and raise it to the 3/2 power. Well, when I multiply 2 times 3/2, those 2's cancel. So I get what? R to the 3rd power. Everybody see where I got that from? So again, I had 3/2 and I'm multiplying it times 2. These 2's would cancel and I would get 3. Say again. We're going to do that in just a second. Now this 49 raised to the 3/2. This is really saying, take 49, take the square root of it, take the square root of 49 and raise it to the 3rd power. Well, what's the square root of 49? 7. Now take 7 and raise it to the 3rd power. What do you get? So our final answer is going to be 1 over 343 r to the 3rd power. I know memorizing these exponent rules is a lot, but once you have them all down, it makes it a lot simpler. Huh? Okay, in that blue little thing. Do you see it? Yeah. Okay, so on 19, we're going to do something kind of similar. there's no negative exponent, so we don't have to flip it, but we are going to take this exponent and we're going to distribute it to everything on the inside. Okay, so we're going to get 81 raised to the 3/2. And then we're going to get n raised to the 6 times 3/2. Okay, so let's start with our variable first. What's 6 times 3? 18. And what's 18 divided by 2? 9. So this is going to be n to the 9th power. Everybody see how I did that? Okay, if you're ever unsure of how to multiply fractions, plug it into Desmos. Okay, use your parentheses, plug it into Desmos, let it do the work for you. Okay. Over here, we have 81 raised to the 3/2. So that's the same thing as taking 81, the square root of 81, and raising it to the 3rd power. What's the square root of 81? 9. And what's 9 to the 3rd power? Okay. And then we've got 729 into the 9th power. That makes sense. That's the final answer, yes. And that's for 19. Can you try 18 and 20? And then we're going to talk about those. All right, so let's go ahead and look at number 18. Okay, so if we have something raised to the 1/2 power, remember that's the same thing as taking the square root of it. So what's the square root of 25? 5. And then we have x to the 4th, and we're going to raise that to the 1/2 power. Well, what's 4 times 1/2? 2. So that'll be x to the 2nd power. So it'll be 5x to the 2nd power. Any questions on how I did that one? That's it. Yeah. Ain't nothing crazy, right? All right, on number 20, it looks a little different from what we've seen in the past. It's raised to the 0.5. Well, that's the same thing as raising something to the 1/2, right? So we're going to take 81 and raise it to the 1/2 power or square root it. And then we're going to take b to the 4th and raise it to the 1/2 power. Well, what's square root of 81? Okay, and b to the 4th power raised to the 1/2. What's 4 times 1/2? 2. So this is 9b to the 2nd power. All right, 21 brings back that negative exponent. Okay, so on 21, if we have a negative exponent, we automatically go ahead and flip it. And now we're going to take the exponent and multiply it times what's this exponent out here. So what's 15 times 4? 60. And then what's 60 divided by 5? So this will be 1 over x to the 12th power. That's it. Okay, so again, that negative makes it flip. And then we take the exponent, raise it to the exponent. So multiply those two and then simplify. Can you try number 22? All right. So let's look at 22. So we've got 8 raised to the negative 0.5. So we're going to go ahead and rewrite this as r to the 8th power raised to the 1/2. In that denominator, we have 8 times 1/2. Well, what's 8 times 1/2? 4. Okay, so this will be 1 over r to the 4th. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to pause this video so that you'll have like separate videos and it won't all just be one. I want you to go ahead and start working on 23 through the rest, okay? And then go back to the ones that are like sketch the graph, and you can go ahead and work on those independently. Again, the goal is to finish this by next Wednesday, okay? Some of it you'll have to do at home because we just won't have enough time in class, but majority of it we'll try to go over in class if we can. Okay, you need to take responsibility for preparing for the final exam. There is no saving grace. There is no, you have to know this material. Okay, so if you haven't been paying attention for the past however long, you need to make sure that you go to E-class and you look at the final exam review because it's broken down by the AKS. Okay, so go ahead and get started on that.